before time began. You called us into, and you made a plan that we live and move and have all our being in thee, in thee, in.
So this song talks about real love and true love, and I feel like sharing this with you, and I pray that it blesses you. Love, 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 love.
If I speak in tongues of men and angels, I resound like a noisy cymbal. But without love, I've said nothing. Without love, I've said nothing.
And if I had prophetic powers, understand all mysteries and knowledge, and if I had all faith to move the mountains, without love I've done nothing. No. Love lives, love believes, love hopes and endures all things. All things,
And if I give all I have, if I give my body
to be burned.
but without love, I am nothing.
No, 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 no.
Without love, I am nothing.
Oh, as for prophecies, they will pass away, pass away, pass away. But love never fails.
Without love,
Yeah, I am nothing. Without love, hey, I am nothing. Love burns, love believes, love hopes and endures all things, all things, all things, oh, and endures all things, oh, all things. Yes, love endures all things. Is the nature of love, is the nature of love. All things, love endures all things. Thank you, Jesus. So this is what real love is. This is what true love is. I pray that this blesses you and changes our perspective of what love is, what true love is. Maybe Sheila wants to tell us the story behind this song, briefly.
So I have this board in my office, and I just asked one of my coworkers to put something inspirational on it, and she came back with these words. And Dulis came into my office, he sat down, picked a guitar, and just started writing and singing out the words. And then we opened the Bible to 1 Corinthians 13, and we just started singing out of the Bible, and here we are today.
Love, 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 love. Yeah, let's vibe.
love never fails. Love never fails. Love never fails. Love never fails. Love never fails.
Oh, and endures all things. Yeah.
I'm Chris Ampadu from Ghana, and I work in 13 countries across West Africa. One of the biggest problems we have in our part of the world is fatalism. And fatalism has come about because of the animistic worldview, whereby we think we are not in control of our world. Samaritan strategy is working to bring biblical worldview to the minds of people, teaching them that Christ, even in the Great Commission, says all power in heaven, on earth, under the earth have been given to him. Now, many fatalistic communities now have started transformational projects. And these projects are just small-scale ministry projects that do not need outside resources. They look at the brokenness that they have, the trash and filth that has engulfed our communities. They look at the fact that people, even though are so resourced, but because they don't have money in their pocket, they think they have nothing. Now people are rising up and then looking at themselves. What can we do? And how can we be God's instruments of blessing? So what can we do to demonstrate God's love? And I think even among Muslim communities, where we have taught in collaboration with Mercy Ships, the impact has been huge, because even though they don't know Christ, they want to obey him. And their obedience comes as they mobilize themselves with the Christians and then try to work on very simple community projects like reconstructing their roads, cleaning their communities, weeding and cleaning their communities, and then also even constructing bridges in small rivers for themselves. And it's amazing how even God is glorified, because here Muslims working together with Christians and then bringing about development in their own community. It's amazing. And people see them, their brothers and sisters, not as Christians and Muslims, but people created in the image of God. We can live together. We can work together. We can take our destiny to our own hands. I think that is the hope. When people come from their fatalistic mindset and say, no, we are not hopeless. We can do it. We don't need to wait. I believe this is the joy that people are at the verge of prosperity and success. And I'm very much happy to be involved in this kind of ministry. Thank you, and God bless. You are welcome back to Transformation Time with the Samaritan Strategy. It has been wonderful as we continue talking about discipling nations. And that has become so important because we can only be the hands and feet and representatives of the Most High God as we take our domains, our place in business. We take our place in health domain. We take our place in the business domain, in the political domain, in every area of life. And so discipling also involves positioning people who don't only pray, but also stand out to represent God's agenda in whatever area they find themselves. And so today we are talking about the gates of the city. And gates become so important because it serves as security for homes. Without gates or without doors, any evil thing can enter your room or your house. The gates serves to ward out, reptiles and evil criminals away from your home. And so when I say the gates of the city, and for that matter, you are a gate, we are talking about you being a representative to take care of yourself. Your whole body belongs to you. You are a gate. If this body would allow itself into drunkenness, into drugs, into immorality, it is all about you. So the brokenness of people has nothing to do with God. It has everything to do with us. You are a gate to your own life. So also you're a gate to your family. You being the father or you being the mother, the success, the prosperity, and the joy of the family depends on you as a mother or as a father. You are a gate. In business, wherever you find yourself, as a secretary, or as a superintendent, or as a supervisor, or as a manager, or as a director, you are a gate. And your role to keep the gates of your business in success or prosperity depends on you. And so gates of the city involves not only what we know of gates, but it's also about you and yourself. And that's why we need to critically look at it as we examine it in line with God's word. And this becomes so important because many people think it is only God who should take care of our lives. And so once we are Christians, it's all about God, God, God. But don't forget, the Christ we talk about is the Christ in you. He has not come to live with us. This Jesus we talk about is right in you. And so you are the representatives, the ambassadors of the Most High God. Where you go, He goes with you. Where you live, He lives with you. Where you work, He works with you. And that is the clear understanding we need to get to us for ourselves, such that we don't behave anyhow. Like Paul said, it is no longer I that lives, but Christ that lives in me. Your life is engulfed with Christ because He lives in you in the presence of the Holy Spirit. And that's why we use the word coram deo. Martin Luther and the other reformists wanted to bring reform to the Catholic Church. Instead, they brought radical change to society. What were political, economic, and the social conditions like in Europe prior to the Reformation? In Luther's pamphlet in 1520, The Babylonian Captivity of the Church, what were the theological, economic, social, and political consequences that were unleashed by the Reformation? Already, we have talked about reviving the Reformation, in which we saw some of the things they worked on. And I did say that we are not asking for that type of reformation to happen in our time. But there are great lessons that we can learn in order to bring to our areas of life. Because primitive societies, cannibalistic societies that lived in Western Europe, as a result of the impact of the Reformation, had a turnaround and became modern day prosperous and successful and developed nations. We in the third world can learn something. Now many have lost their faith, but they have the principles. If we can just have the principles, we as very religious people can turn around our world to bring about prosperity and success. So when you talk about the gates of the city, you talk about the church without walls. What most people know about the church is a church with walls. They have rooms, they have temples, they have cathedrals where they will always want to go and pray, go and worship, go and serve their God. Now that is important anyway. But now we have a Christ who do not live in walls. He lives in us. He dwells in us. So we are the temple of the living God. And where we are, that is where He is. That's why we talk about the church. You, without walls. Where do you live? Where do you work? Where do you go? Wherever you go, He is right there because He lives in you. Martin Luther, in the Babylonian captivity of the church, 1520, in that pamphlet he said, the works of monks and priests, however holy and odious they be, do not differ one whit in the sight of God from the works of the rustic laborer in the field, or the woman going about her household task, but that all works are measured before God by faith alone. He continued by saying, indeed, the menial housework of a manservant or maidservant is often more acceptable to God than all the fasting and other works of a monk or priest, I believe, pastors, bishops, apostles, because the monk or priest lacks faith. How? Bible says, by their fruits you shall know them. It is not by what we say, it's by our lives. People will know the God who lives in us. In Jesus' prayer, John 17, 15 to 19, Jesus prayed, my prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. They are not of the world, even as I am not of it. Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, I've sent them into the world. For them, I sanctify myself, that they too may be truly sanctified. Now, what is the principle that Jesus is articulating in this prayer? My prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. I believe this is the heart of Christ. It is not His wish that we become Christians and die and go to heaven. It is not His thinking that we become Christians such that we become too spiritual to become irrelevant in the world that we find ourselves. And that's why He said, it is His prayer that His Father do not take them out of the world. We are His very representatives. And the moment we leave this world, you know that His presence cannot be recognized. And that's why He prayed for His disciples, that God should not take them out of the world, but whilst in this evil world, they'll be protected. I think that is His heart for you and I. And that is His prayer, because He knows we have a role to play in the transformation of the nations. We are in a broken world, a world of evil, a world of sickness, a world of frustrations, a world of diseases. But then, we are not just here by chance. We are the light of the world. We are the salt of the world. And so if we lose that, then we become irrelevant. in the world we find ourselves. And that's why, you see, we are Christians to showcase the Christ in us. Unfortunately, some people have become so conformed to the world, such that they do the very things that the worldly people do. They drink and get drunk like the worldly people. They are so immoral. They are so corrupt. Some always live a life of jealousy, a life of enviness, a life of corruption, a life of hatred, animosity. Pull him down. The very things the worldly people do, they also find themselves doing the same thing. So they are conformed to the world such that they are indistinguishable from the world. And such people cannot make any impact in the world. In the end, they all lead to death. There are some also who have become so spiritual such that they have disengaged themselves from the world. They are in the church and out of the world. And for them, it is all about church, being in a church room, church buildings, temples, from Monday to Sunday. All activities, all their worship is in buildings. Meanwhile, around the church buildings is total darkness, evil that Satan has brought to our world. So the big question, why are you in the world? You are in the world, but out of the world. And so these people are so spiritual that they don't care about the world, the sanitation. They don't care about the transformation of the world. They will quote for you, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If anyone love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. It's true. But see, Jesus is talking about the sins and evil in the world. This is his world. He created it. He loves his world. And John 3:16 clearly says, for God so loved the world. He loved the world that he gave his best, his only begotten Son to the world. He cannot hate his word. But people are so heavenly oriented that in the world they find themselves, they are irrelevant. Well, I pray such people easily are taken to heaven. Because once they don't have any relevance here on earth, then I don't understand why they should live. But God understands. And he knows why we should be where we are. We are here not just to pass through history. Wherever you find yourself, you are not just there to pass through that area of life. We are not just here to pass through history. We are here to make history. That is why we are alive. We are here to impact the world. So we are in the world, but not of the world. But we are in the world to impact this world. Because the world and its domains don't belong to Satan. Satan has not created anything. Satan has not won any battle. Jesus remains the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And we are here to impact children, adults, the world in terms of sanitation, environment, science and technology, business, politics, and bring them all under the lordship of Christ. Bring life into them all. That is why the reformists, had these were gathered and scattered. So it became so important, even in their church, programs. Why do you gather on Sunday? Because Sunday, for the reformists, was a time to gather for worship and equipping the saints. There's a focus on that. We gather together to worship the Lord of hosts, our King and Lord. Through that, the saints are equipped, empowered to go and disciple the nations. So Sunday was a day for gathering and equipping the saints. But Monday to Sunday, Monday to Saturday, before Sunday, the saints who have gathered and equipped on Sunday are scattered. They are scattered into agriculture, into family lives, into their marriage lives. They are scattered into their industries, into their public and civil service, into their businesses, into their law professions. To do what? They are scattered for service and discipling the nations. Why? Because they are the salt of the earth. They are the light of the world. Christ has no hands than our hands. Christ has no feet than our feet. We cannot just restrict ourselves in buildings and think this world, evil world, will be transformed. So people are equipped and scattered from Monday to Saturday to go to the various domains, to be the light, to be the salt, and to disciple the nations. Unfortunately, that's not what we find nowadays, where people are kept in buildings, like in warehouses, from Monday to Saturday, and claim to be worshiping a God. The church is not made to stay in warehouses. We have never known that. The church is always scattered. On the day of Pentecost, the disciples were scattered. And so, even apart from disciples, all other believers were scattered to various domains to disciple the nations. The church is externally focused church. It's not internal. Because you are to go into the world. You are not to stay in buildings. You are to go into the world and make disciples. People who are like Christ in business, in politics, in accounting, the various professions. We are to go, make them. So Christ's presence should be experienced wherever people find themselves. And that's why in 1 Peter 2:9, every Christian is a minister. Sometimes it's so sad where we have placed the minister, the priests, in the domain of people who are specialized in preaching, like pastors, like priests, prophets, apostles, bishops. Now the Bible is so clear that every Christian is a minister. And 1 Peter 2:9 says it. It says that, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. He's talking to believers, to Christians, to you and I. You don't need to be ordained. You have the Christ in you. The whole of God's best is in you. So if you are ordained for a particular task, that is wonderful. But then, you don't need to be ordained for you to see yourself as an ambassador or a representative of the Most High God in the place that you find out yourself. And that's why Peter was talking to the believers. You are a chosen people. Not only a priest, but a royal priesthood. Now, that is whom you are. Sometimes we underrate ourselves and think this type of work belongs to priests, to pastors, and to people who call themselves men of God. But this is the task of all believers. And the Bible clearly says that you are a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God, that you may declare the praise of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. That is whom you are. And we can't underrate it. We can't pretend and leave that to a particular domain thinking they are the men of God. I don't think you are a man of Satan. Just because you don't have a title on you. You are not a man of God, a woman of God. I mean, that is some of the Gnostic beliefs that came to us through the early missionaries. Now we have to think biblical and transformational. And so, like Christ, every believer is a minister. Every believer is a prophet speaking on behalf of God to the people. And that is the ministry in word. We can see this in Acts 1 verse 8. We say that when the Holy Spirit comes on you, you'd have power. Now that's so important. You have power to do what? To be someone. To be. Hallelujah. To be. Wherever you are a minister. The same thing we see in Acts 2, 14 to 18. You are a priest also, speaking on behalf of the people before God. A ministry of service and mercy. A ministry of deed. We can see this in John 14 verse 6, Hebrews 10, 19 to 20, and 1 Peter 2, 9. Every Christian is a minister. You're also a king. We have the delegated authority, ministry of stewards. Matthew 28 verse 19. Revelations 1 verse 6. And this is where our mandate is. Go into all the world and make disciples. Not just converts. Not just go and witness and live it there that you have touched or you have made people see Christ. Go make them disciples. That's the mandate we have. So you are the gatekeepers. Out of the building to the gates of the city. Now this becomes so important because in the ancient times, the gates to the city were not merely the physical gates. It referred to the area around the gates, the land just inside and outside of the gates. The gates also represent the life of the city, her commerce, discourse, governance, the lifeblood, the dynamic of a city took place at the gates. Very important place. Again, the gates, because of the importance of the gates, the elders, that the leaders, inhabited the gates. They took possession of the gates by their presence. And whoever occupies the city gates governs that city. They have stewardship over the city. And that should tell you the importance of the gate. And that's why we bring this to you. That you are a gate. To your own personality, you are a gate. You can be broken if you accept and allow yourself to make wrong decisions. The choice is yours. The position you occupy, you are the gate. Abraham Kuyper, in the Stone Lectures, 1898, said something about the domains. He said there's no sphere of human life is conceivable in which religion does not maintain its demands that God shall be praised, that God's ordinances shall be observed, and that every laborer shall be permeated with its aura in fervent and ceaseless prayer. Kuyper continued by saying, wherever man may stand, whatever he may do, to whatever he may apply his hand in agriculture, in commerce, and in industry, or in or his mind, or in the world of arts and science, he is, in whatsoever it may be, constantly standing before the face of his God. He is employed in the service of his God. He has strictly to obey his God. And above all, he has to aim at the glory of his God. And I like that portion that says, because it's something that speaks to us directly. He says he is, in whatsoever it may be, constantly standing before the face of God. He is employed in the service of his God. He has strictly to obey his God. And above all, he has to aim at the glory of his God. Is that what you think? That whatever you do or wherever you stand, you are standing before the face of God? Or in your employment, you are employed in the service of God? And for that matter, you have to strictly obey your God if you are his child. It is not in the church or when you are praying or in worship. Wherever you stand, you have to strictly obey. And that is what the Great Commission is about. Teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. In Matthew 28, verse 20. And so it's very interesting to find ourselves as Christians, some who are most corrupt and live a life of hatred, schism, animosity, jealousy, and enviness. Because we are people who should have been trained to obey God. And above all, there's one goal, which, as we have mentioned before, one goal and one aim. We aim at the glory of God. What are the implications of this for you and I, personally? What are the implications of this for our work in the church? When you read Proverbs 31, verse 23, it says, her husband is respected at the city gates, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. We take our seats in the gates. People of dignity, people of respect, people who cannot be looked down upon. Why? You are special. So unique. Created in the image and likeness of God. You can't do the things other people do. Above all, you represent the Most High God. In your workplace, you represent him. In your business, you represent the Most High God. In your profession, you can't do the things others are doing. You should stand out as his representative, as his ambassador. And so the three fundamental institutions that go with the gates have to do with the family, which is social, civil governance, we deal with government and law, and the church. As far as the family is concerned, it's the social. It presupposes community and rationality. The family is the first institution that God ordained, and it is the foundation upon which societies are built. Strong families lead to strong and stable societies. Families that are fractured lead to the deterioration of society. And the marriage between a man and a woman is a covenantal, relation with a third person, God. Development of godly parents and responsible citizens. The family, being the basic social institution, is the one under the most serious attack in our modern day. The definitions of marriage have been redefined. The family have been redefined. And now, giving different meanings. Homosexuals, transgender, and gays have given different meanings to the meaning of the family. But then, the institution of family is from God. It can never be replaced. And that's why we should honor it, and we should hold dear to it, and we should maintain it, because the foundation is God, not man. It is not man who defines family. It is God. And it is sanctified. When it talks about government and law, we talk about the legislative, judicial, and executive or administrative. It presupposes righteousness, holiness, personal responsibility. Evil are things that should be dealt with. The state exists to protect its citizens and to promote liberty and justice for all. Promote the rule of law, not the rule of man. That is development of freedom and justice. When we talk about the church, it's a religious. It presupposes worship of the personal, infinite God. The church is the primary agent for the developing of communities and the building of nations. The church is to be the conscience of the nation. It is the primary agency of the kingdom of God. The development of servant leaders and incarnational communities that impact the society. And that's why we're here. Not just to dance it, not just to shout it, not just to claim it. We are to develop servant leaders, people who are like Christ when they are given authority and positions. Managers, directors, governmental leaders, they see themselves as servants, people who are to serve. They don't have the village chief mentality. And we are to be incarnational, impacting our societies. So the domains of society include the social, that is the families, the churches, incarnational, impacting our societies. So the domains of society include the social, that is the families, the churches, and communities. Also, we talk about government and law, business and economics, the arts and communication. We talk about education, health and, science and technology. And then we talk about health. And so reading the law, resolving legal disputes, news and public announcements, public meetings and discourse, governing and administration in the Old Testament were all done at the gates. And when we talk about the economic, it presupposes creativity, enterprise, innovation, an open universe, private property, and community responsibility and environment stewardship. Man is an economic being. He was made for the enterprise and to steward creation as development and responsible use of material bounty and worth. That's man. When it comes to arts and communication, the theistic, that is the arts, music, films, poetry, writings, presupposes beauty, splendor, majesty, brilliance, magnificence, harmony, excellence. As God is the first artist, man made in his image is a secondary artist. God creates and maintains the primary creation. Man is to create art that reflect the primary creator and his creation. That is development of beauty and cultural artifacts through the arts and through words. In education, we talk about intellectual and character. It presupposes objective truths and moral absolutes. Education is primarily the responsibility of parents, and secondarily, the church. Development of citizens who exhibit wisdom and moral responsibility, who are able to worship God, serve their community, and steward creation. When it comes to science and technology, it presupposes orderly universe and rationality, intelligence, comprehensibility. Through science, man can learn to think God's thoughts after him. Through the application of his knowledge in technology, man can fight against the ravages of natural evil, hunger, sickness, pain, and death. And when it comes to health, that is the development of tools to fight natural evil and to discover truth. It presupposes an original state of wholeness and wholesomeness. The fall has led to brokenness, sickness, and death. Increased health is to be a byproduct of salvation. And that is why you and I have a critical role to play. You are the gates that God is looking up to. And so from all that I've mentioned, you can see that you can be in all these businesses of health, in science and technology. You may be involved in education. You may be involved in the arts and communication. That's the arts, music, films, and poetry, writing. You may be in economics, or you may be in governance, or law, or the church, or the family, or community development. God has intentions for all of these areas. We cannot fail. We cannot fail than to be the light, to be the salt, to be the hands, to be the feet, and to be the heart of God, to represent his agenda in all these domains of life. There is no middle road. If you are a child of God and you have that Christ in you, there's no middle road in this. You have to stand out to represent his agenda. The gates of the city. You are the gates, and God is counting on you. We continue in our next lesson to finish up this lesson. Until then, don't forget that you are the gate to your own life. You are the gate in the profession God has placed you. You are the gate in the domain where you find yourself. You are the gate of the city, and for that matter, your nation. We cannot fail. God bless you.
Before into, and you made a plan that will live and move and have all our being indeed, into the wisdom before time began. You called us into, and you made the plan that you will live and move and have all our being. You are the wisdom before time began. You reign forever, your name is ever great. You are the wisdom before. Oh, magnificent King of Israel, yeah, your name is great forevermore.